First Contact and Crisis. The message arrived on Earth's Deep Space Listening Array during the winter solstice of 2157. At first, Dr. Kenzo Nakamura thought the peculiar wave patterns were another space anomaly until they began repeating with mathematical precision. As the chief xenolinguist at the United Earth Space Command's Translation Division, he had spent decades searching for exactly this kind of signal. Director Harrison. Kenzo's voice trembled as he contacted his superior. "I think you need to see this immediately." Within hours, the UESC's First Contact Protocol transformed the quiet research facility into a hive of activity. The message, once decoded, was both extraordinary and devastating. An advanced civilization of photosynthetic beings called the Sylphids was facing extinction, and they were specifically reaching out to humanity, the youngest spacefaring race in the known galaxy. Admiral Rayna Patel stood before the United Earth Council chamber 3 days later, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic projection of the Sylphid transmission. "Distinguished Council members," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 30 years of military service, "what we're facing is unprecedented. The Sylphids are dying from a pathogen that attacks their chloroplast-like organs. Their entire civilization, billions of sentient beings, will be gone within months without intervention." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Councillor Viktor Petrov's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, why us? The transmission clearly indicates there are at least 12 other spacefaring civilizations in our sector alone. Most are centuries ahead of us technologically." Rayna's expression hardened. "Because, Councillor, they've all refused to help. The Sylphids are plant-based life forms. The other civilizations, all herbivores, see them as potential food sources. They refuse to assist due to their own biological imperatives and cultural taboos." She paused, allowing a slight smile. "But we humans, we're different. We're omnivores, predators even. Our very nature, which has made other species wary of us, makes us uniquely suited to help." Lieutenant Commander Jamal Ibrahim, the UAC's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward. "The Sylphids' biology is fascinating. They photosynthesize like plants, but have cognitive capabilities that match or exceed our own. Their civilization has mastered interstellar travel, but they've never developed weapons or defenses. They're peaceful to a fault." The holographic display shifted to show the Sylphid homeworld, a stunning azure planet orbiting a bright blue-white star. "Their world is dying," Jamal continued. "The pathogen has spread to their food sources, their infrastructure. Even their ships are partially grown from living material. They need immediate evacuation and a cure." Councillor Diana Rossi leaned forward. "And what exactly can we offer them? We're barely a century into space travel ourselves." "We can offer them Earth," Admiral Patel replied firmly. "Our planet's biodiversity, our experience with disease control, our medical knowledge, and most importantly, our determination. We're not bound by the same biological aversions as other species. We can handle their biological material without the instinctive revulsion that herbivorous species feel." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, often viewed as primitive by other spacefaring races due to their carnivorous origins, could become the saviors of an advanced civilization. First Contact specialist Theo Williams, who had been quietly analyzing the Sylphid cultural data, spoke up. "There's something else to consider. The Sylphids have a prophecy. They believe that in their darkest hour, they would be saved by those who walk the middle path between light and shadow. They believe we're their destined protectors." Admiral Patel surveyed the chamber, her voice resolute. "We have a choice to make. We can turn away like everyone else. Or we can prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our military might. It's our compassion, our ability to rise above our nature to help others. The next few hours saw heated debate, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. Operation Green Haven was authorized, marking humanity's first major intervention in galactic affairs. As the council dispersed, Dr. Nakamura approached Admiral Patel with fresh translations. "They're calling us the Guardians," he said softly. "Their entire species is placing their trust in us." Patel nodded, already mentally preparing for the monumental task ahead. "Then we better not let them down. Humanity has been waiting for a moment to prove itself to the galaxy. We just never expected it would come like this." As Earth's fleets began mobilizing for the largest rescue operation in human history, news of their decision spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations watched in disbelief as the primitive predators they had dismissed prepared to save a species they considered their evolutionary superiors. The first phase of Operation Green Haven was about to begin, and with it, humanity's reputation in the galaxy would change forever. The carnivores were coming, not to hunt, but to protect and preserve life itself. The diplomatic dance. The UESC flagship Horizon cut through the darkness of space, its massive hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the ship's diplomatic chamber, Admiral Rayna Patel faced the holographic representations of the Galactic Council's most influential species. The Vasilians, tall, graceful beings with iridescent skin, spoke first, their translator converting musical tones into human speech. "You cannot comprehend what you're involving yourselves in," Ambassador Cathin declared, her form shimming with agitation. "The sylphids are a protected species. Their biological makeup is too similar to our ancestral food sources. No herbivorous civilization can be trusted to." "Which is precisely why humanity is suited for this task," Patel interrupted, her patience wearing thin after hours of debate. "We don't share your biological imperatives or cultural taboos regarding plant-based life forms." The Madorian representative, a being composed of crystalline structures, pulsed with skepticism. "Your species still consumes animal flesh. You are predators, barely beyond planetary confinement. The risk." Lieutenant Commander Jamal Ibrahim stepped forward, his dark eyes reflecting the holographic lights. "With respect, Ambassador, our predatory nature is why we can help. We've evolved beyond our base instincts. We farm both plants and animals, yet we've developed extensive conservation programs for both. We understand the balance required." The chamber erupted in a cascade of alien languages as the various representatives argued among themselves. Patel exchanged a knowing look with First Contact Specialist Thea Williams. They had expected resistance, but the level of obstruction was approaching absurdity. Meanwhile, across the ship in the newly established Sylphid embassy, Dr. Nakamura sat with Luminara, the Sylphid High Speaker. Unlike the hostile holograms in the diplomatic chamber, Luminara's presence was soothing, her translucent, fern-like appendages gently swaying as she spoke. "Your people risk much for us." Luminara communicated through a mixture of bioluminescent patterns and gentle movements. "The other races, they fear you, yet you show more compassion than any of them." Nakamura smiled, adjusting the environmental controls to maintain the perfect conditions for his guest. "Humanity has a long history of being underestimated. Sometimes, the most unexpected allies prove to be the strongest." The ship's alert system suddenly pulsed red. In the command center, Lieutenant Maria Valdez's hands flew across the tactical display. "Admiral to the bridge. We have multiple unauthorized ships entering the Sylphid system." Patel excused herself from the diplomatic session, rushing to the bridge with Ibrahim close behind. The tactical display showed a fleet of Vasilian ships moving toward the Sylphid homeworld. "They're claiming it's a quarantine action," Valdez reported, her voice tight with tension. "They're saying they'll blockade the system to prevent the spread of the pathogen. And conveniently let the Sylphids die out in the process," Ibrahim added bitterly. Patel's expression hardened as she assessed the situation. The Vasilians had centuries of technological advancement over humanity, but they had never faced a species willing to bare its teeth. "Open a channel to the Vasilian flagship," she commanded. When the alien commander appeared on screen, Patel didn't wait for pleasantries. "You have exactly 10 minutes to reverse course. The Sylphids are under humanity's protection. Any action against them will be considered an act of war." The Vasilian commander's translucent skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "You would risk war with a superior force." "Superior technology doesn't always win wars," Patel replied calmly. "And humanity has a long history of overcoming supposedly superior forces. We're predators, remember. We don't just hunt, we protect our own. The Sylphids are now under our protection." She nodded to Valdez, who activated the ship's weapons systems. Across the system, dozens of human ships moved into defensive positions. They were fewer in number and less advanced, but each crew member stood ready to defend their new allies. The Vasilian commander studied the human ships for long moments before responding. "You would spill blood for beings you barely know. To save billions of innocent lives." Without hesitation. The tension stretched for several minutes before the Vasilian fleet slowly began to retreat. As they disappeared into hyperspace, Luminara's voice echoed through the bridge's communication system. "The prophecy spoke truth," she said, her words translated for all to hear. "In our darkest hour, those who walk between light and shadow would rise to defend us. Not because of biological imperative or political gain, but because it was right." Patel turned to her crew, her voice firm. "The diplomatic games are over. Begin the evacuation immediately. We have billions of lives to save and no more time to waste on politics." As the Horizon's crews mobilized for the massive evacuation effort, news of humanity's stand spread across the galaxy. The primitive predators had not only offered sanctuary to the Sylphids, but had faced down one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations to protect them. The real work was just beginning. Converting Earth's biodomes, transporting millions of refugees, finding a cure for the pathogen. The challenges ahead were enormous. But humanity had shown its true nature to the galaxy. They were predators, yes, but predators with purpose. Protectors by choice. In the ship's observation deck, Nakamura watched the first evacuation ships descend toward the Sylphid world. "Did we just change galactic politics forever?" he asked Ibrahim. The xenobiologist smiled. "We did something better. We proved that being feared doesn't mean you can't also be loved." Operation Green Haven. The massive biodomes of New Eden stretched across the Australian outback, their crystalline surfaces gleaming under the morning sun. Inside, Lieutenant Commander Ibrahim watched as another group of Sylphid refugees was welcomed into their new home. The structures were engineering marvels, each dome carefully calibrated to match the exact atmospheric conditions of the Sylphid's home world. "The integration rate is exceeding expectations," reported Dr. Olivia Blackwood, the project's lead terraforming specialist. Her hands danced across a holographic display showing vital statistics from all 12 primary settlement zones. "The Sylphids are adapting to Earth's gravity and day-night cycle better than we hoped." But Ibrahim's attention was fixed on something else. A concerning pattern in the latest biological scans. "The pathogen is evolving," he said quietly, pointing to a microscopic image. It's attempting to adapt to Earth's conditions. High above, aboard the UESC Horizon, Admiral Petel received the report with growing concern. The evacuation fleet had already transported over 2 million sylphids to Earth, with millions more waiting. They were in a race against time, and the finish line kept moving. "We need to accelerate the evacuation," she announced to her command staff. "Lieutenant Valdez, coordinate with the fleet. I want transport capacity increased by 30%. "Admiral," Valdez interjected, her expression troubled, "we're detecting unusual activity at the edge of the system. The Midorians are back, and they're not alone." The tactical display showed a growing fleet of ships from various species gathering at the system's edge. None had made hostile moves yet, but their presence was a clear message. "They're afraid," First Contact Specialist Williams observed. "Afraid that if we succeed, it will shift the balance of power in the galaxy. A primitive predator species proving more enlightened than the so-called advanced civilizations." Patel's response was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Earth. Dr. Nakamura's hologram appeared, his usually calm demeanor shaken. "Admiral, we've discovered something in the ancient sylphid texts. The pathogen. It's not natural. It was engineered." The revelation sent shockwaves through the command center. "Someone created this?" Petel demanded, her voice hard. "Who?" "We're still analyzing the data," Nakamura replied, "but preliminary evidence suggests it was a collaborative effort by several species. They wanted to eliminate the sylphids without direct violence, make it look like a natural extinction. The pieces fell into place. The urgent blockade attempts, the diplomatic obstruction, the gathering fleet. It wasn't just about biological imperatives or cultural taboos. It was about covering up an attempted genocide. Down in New Eden's primary research facility, Dr. Blackwood worked furiously with a team of human and sylphid scientists. The sylphid researcher, Solaris, used his species' natural bioluminescence to communicate complex biological data faster than any computer interface. The pathogen's structure, Solaris signaled, his patterns translated in real time. It bears markers of Vasilian biotechnology, but also Midorian and others. They combined their knowledge to create something they thought unstoppable. "But they didn't account for human medical science," Blackwood replied, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "We've spent millennia fighting diseases, developing immunities, and creating cures. Our bodies are battlegrounds of survival, and we've learned from every war." Ibrahim joined them, bringing new data from the latest evacuees. "We need to think like predators," he suggested. "In nature, when a predator faces a threat, it doesn't just defend, it attacks. What if we could turn the pathogen against itself?" The research team worked through the night, combining human medical knowledge with sylphid biological expertise. They weren't just looking for a cure anymore. They were developing a weapon against the weapon. Meanwhile, the situation in space grew more tense. The alien fleet had grown to over 300 ships, but the human evacuation fleet continued its work, protected by Admiral Patel's smaller but determined battle group. "They're threatening a full quarantine blockade," Valdez reported, claiming it's to prevent the pathogen from spreading. "No," Petel replied, her voice steady. "They're trying to finish what they started. But they've never faced humans before. They don't understand what it means to threaten something under our protection." She opened a channel to all Earth forces in the system. "This is Admiral Petel. You all know what's at stake here. Billions of innocent lives, and the very principle of justice in this galaxy. They think we're primitive, violent, unable to rise above our predatory nature. Let's show them what that nature really means, not just the ability to fight, but the will to protect, to preserve, to stand against overwhelming odds for what's right. The human ships moved into defensive formations around the evacuation corridors. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not outmatched in determination. In New Eden, as another group of Sylphid refugees emerged from their transport ships, a young human child approached them, offering a small potted plant, an earth flower modified to survive in their atmospheric conditions. The Sylphid received it with a shimmer of joy, their bioluminescence creating patterns of gratitude that needed no translation. Dr. Blackwood watched the exchange, then turned back to her work with renewed vigor. They would find a cure, not just because they could, but because they must. Humanity had taken on the role of protector, and they would show the galaxy what that truly meant. The primitive predators were proving to be the most advanced civilization of all, not in technology, but in spirit, and that spirit would not be broken. The survival symphony, the breakthrough came at dawn. Dr. Blackwood burst into the command center of New Eden, her eyes wild with excitement. We've done it. The cure. It's not just a cure, it's an evolution. The combined human Sylphid research team had discovered something extraordinary. By combining human immune system mechanisms with Sylphid adaptive biology, they'd created a biological countermeasure that didn't just fight the pathogen. It transformed it into a protective symbiote. The very weapon they used against the Sylphids. Ibrahim explained to Admiral Poetel via hologram, we've turned it into their shield. Poetic justice, wouldn't you say? But implementing the cure wouldn't be simple. The alien fleet blockading the Sylphid system had grown more aggressive, and tension was reaching a breaking point. In orbit above Earth, the first treated Sylphids began to glow with a new intensity. Their bioluminescence, once soft and gentle, now pulsed with vibrant energy. The modified pathogen had bonded with their cellular structure, creating a stronger, more resilient species. They tried to destroy us. Luminara communicated to the Human Leadership Council, our patterns shifting with complex emotions. Instead, they forced us to find allies who would help us transcend our limitations. The next phase would be the most dangerous, delivering the cure to the Sylphid homeworld and the millions still awaiting evacuation. The hostile fleet wouldn't just stand by and watch their genocide attempt be undone. Admiral Poetel gathered her fleet commanders for the final push. This is the moment that will define humanity's place in the galaxy, she declared. Not through conquest or technological superiority, but through our willingness to stand against injustice, no matter the cost. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. Human ships, though outnumbered, used unprecedented tactics. They deployed swarms of automated drones carrying the cure, while their warships executed maneuvers that the more advanced species had never considered, strategies born from millennia of human conflict and cooperation. They think like predators, a Vasilian commander was reported to say, but they fight like protectors. How do you defeat an enemy whose aggression serves compassion? The cure spread rapidly through the Sylphid population. As reports of its success reached the blockading fleet, their unity began to fracture. Some ships withdrew immediately, unwilling to be associated with the failed genocide. Others, desperate to prevent their crime from being exposed, launched a final, furious attack. The battle for the Sylphid system became a legend, not for its scale or destruction, but for its outcome. Human ships took heavy damage, but refused to withdraw. They protected the cure-bearing vessels with their own hulls, crews sacrificing themselves to ensure the Sylphid's survival. In the end, it wasn't human weapons that won the day. It was the sight of the Sylphids themselves, their bodies now glowing with unprecedented power, rising up in ships grown from their evolved biology. The species that had been meant to die instead emerged stronger, protected by the very predators that the galaxy had feared. The aftermath transformed galactic politics. The conspiracy behind the engineered pathogen was exposed, leading to the dissolution of the old power structures. A new galactic council was formed, with humanity and the Sylphids as founding members. 1 year later, Admiral Patel stood in the great biodome of New Eden, watching human children play among glowing Sylphid younglings. The two species had developed an unexpected symbiosis. Sylphid bioluminescence helped accelerate human crop growth, while human biological innovations helped Sylphids thrive in diverse environments. "We thought we were saving them," Dr. Nakamura mused, standing beside her. "But perhaps they were saving us too, from the assumption that being predators meant we couldn't also be protectors." The last of the Sylphid refugees had been cured, and their homeworld was beginning to recover. But many chose to stay on Earth, creating a permanent cultural bridge between the species. The biodomes had become symbols of unity, proof that strength and gentleness could coexist. "The galaxy feared us for being predators," Petal replied, watching a human child gently tend to a Sylphid sapling. "They never understood that a true predator's greatest instinct isn't to hunt, it's to protect what's precious." Above them, the massive dome filtered the sunlight into patterns that made both species thrive. Outside, Earth's first interstellar embassy was under construction, its design a fusion of human and Sylphid architecture. The primitive predators had become the guardians of peace, their fierce nature turned to the preservation of life rather than its destruction. The story of humanity and the Sylphids became required learning in every galactic institution, not as a tale of war or rescue, but as proof that salvation can come from the most unexpected sources. The carnivorous humans, once dismissed as barely civilized, had shown the galaxy that true civilization isn't measured by technological advancement or biological evolution, but by the capacity for compassion in the face of prejudice. And in the great archives of the Sylphid people, a new prophecy was recorded. "When darkness threatens, look not to the light, but to those who walk between light and shadow, for in their fierce hearts burns the truest flame of all, the will to protect." The age of the guardian predators had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Legacy of the predators. 50 years after Operation Green Haven, the galaxy had transformed in ways none could have predicted. The great biodomes of Earth had become pilgrim sites, where species from across the stars came to witness the impossible harmony between predator and photosynthetic beings. The Sylphids, once facing extinction, had flourished beyond imagination. Their evolved biology, enhanced by the modified pathogen-turned-symbiote, allowed them to adapt to diverse environments. Their cities were living works of art, merging seamlessly with human architecture in ways that celebrated both species' unique characteristics. In the new Galactic Academy on Luna, Professor Nakamura's daughter, Hikari, taught synodiplomacy to a class of mixed species. The Green Haven incident, as it's now known, she explained to her students, wasn't just about saving one species. It was about challenging the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. The lecture hall itself was a testament to change. Herbivorous species sitting comfortably beside carnivores, their ancient biological imperatives overcome by understanding and respect. Above them, through the transparent dome, Earth and its countless biodomes gleamed like jewels. The Human-Sylphid Alliance had sparked a renaissance in biological science. The combination of human medical knowledge and Sylphid bioengineering led to breakthroughs that benefited all species. Diseases once thought incurable fell to their combined expertise, while their environmental technologies transformed hostile worlds into habitable paradises. But perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. The concept of predator had been redefined. Younger species entering the galactic community no longer faced discrimination based on their biological nature. Instead, they were evaluated by their actions, their choices, their capacity for both strength and compassion. Admiral Patel, now serving on the Galactic Council in her final years, often reflected on how far they'd come. The primitive predators who had once been feared were now sought after as mediators and protectors. Humanity's unique perspective, understanding both the drive to hunt and the duty to preserve, had become an invaluable asset in galactic diplomacy. In the original New Eden biodome, now a historical monument, a simple plaque told the story in words that every schoolchild, human and alien alike, learned by heart. Here stands the proof that nature's fiercest